anger in and of itself is simply an emotion, and it can pose your future. It can redirect the entire course. If I'm only ever going to live with me my whole life, shouldn't I get to know myself? I don't say this happens to me all the time. And the more extreme words people use, the more extreme emotions they have.
Welcome to KhanKlinics, your dedicated space for exploring the vital connections that shape your well-being. Here we dive into everything from achieving peak physical fitness by mastering sustainable weight management to optimizing your diet for a vibrant life. We're passionate about uncovering the power interplay between your mental and physical health, offering you insightful strategies to nurture both. Join us as we unlock the secrets to embark on your self-confidence and your inspiration by interviewing the top-rated personalities, not from only the US, but around the world. At KhanKlinics, our commitment is to bring you evidence-based information that inspires you confidently control your health journey and live your life to the absolute fullness. I'm your host, Amir Khan. Let's get ready to unlock the true potential of being a human with the most amazing people around us. So my follow-up question to this is, I've seen people telling me that I've noticed that during my sleep, if I've had a tough day or a day when I am not sure of what is going on, I also start seeing dreams where I am either angry or I react. Is that a manifestation of what the amygdala is projecting you to make you think? And if that is happening, how do you go back and reassess the situation? Because obviously you're angry, probably you're not safe and you're not feeling not safe. You're carrying it to your sleep, and then you're manifesting it somehow in your sleep because of that situation.
So I've done a lot of work around dreams throughout my whole career. And so I've been practicing for 27 years, but I've been following dream work long before I became a professional. And what I have found is this. In the same way, there's an old dun 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 dun, and then people want to follow up with dun dun. In the same way, the brain wants to follow finish things. What I have found in my own clinical work is that for many people, dreams are your psyche's way of finishing something that it started during the day. So let's say that you are really wrestling with an issue that you haven't completed in your mind. The odds are you're going to dream about that. And I think what's happening is your brain is trying to complete it, trying to understand the concept. And when people find themselves getting angry in their dreams, what I have seen through the years in my own practice is telling yourself right before you go to sleep those very same words that I said, I'm safe, but also say, in my dream, I'm going to wake myself up if I need to. And what people have, even people who think, I can't do that, the more you tell yourself as you're falling asleep, if I catch myself dreaming tonight, I will wake myself up. What happens is you can start to interact in your dream. You can start to say, wait a minute, I'm dreaming. I don't need to act so extreme in this dream because I really am safe. And then what you'll find is the more you can solve things in your dreams, the more in your waking life you will not get as angry. And I have seen this happen for many, many years. So I think it's super important right before you fall asleep, the words you say to yourself before you fall asleep. Also having a pen and pad by your bed. So when you wake up, you can write down the very first things you remember. And the more you keep a dream journal, Let's say that there's someone who's super skeptical listening and they say, oh, dreams are a bunch of hogwash. Well, even if you keep a dream journal, at a minimum, you've created your own personalized projective instrument. So you're able to look at your dreams, and whatever you're learning to think about them, you will teach yourself something profound about how you respond to the world. I can give something in, I can give you what I think is one of the most important lessons I could ever share. And that is this: the mind always wants to match the body. So I love in cognitive therapy, there's a thought that your events don't cause you to feel a certain way. It's what you say to yourself that makes you feel a certain way. So if you're driving to work and there's a traffic jam and you say to yourself, gosh, I don't want to get to work yet. I want to finish this phone call. And then you have a traffic jam, you're going to say, oh, thank goodness I have a traffic jam. You're not upset at all. But if you're going to that job interview and you want to be there and you're late, you're going to be upset. So the traffic jam doesn't make you upset. What makes you upset is what you tell yourself. Okay, so your mind, so your thoughts impact how you feel. But here's what I teach in yield theory. That is true. But what's also true is that your mind wants to match your body. So let's say you're hungry. How many people listening right now have been in arguments because they were hungry and they get hangry. They get, agitated, irritable. Well, what happens is this: when you're hungry, the part of your brain that recognizes hunger is the hypothalamus, and that is seated in the middle of your emotional system. So it makes a lot of sense why, when you're hungry, you feel agitated and irritable. Or when you're tired, the hypothalamus also is for fatigue, sleep. So when you're tired, if your mind wants to match your body. So if your body feels agitated and irritable and your mind wants to match it, it'll create a story to make sense out of that. So here's what happens. Let's say you're hungry, your body's agitated, you feel irritable, and then you point to your loved one and you point to your wife and say, well, I'm really upset with you because we didn't finish that conversation earlier. And you're not really mad at her. What you're mad at is your body's hungry. So what if you were able to learn this? And I've been married 25 years. So I might say to my wife, listen, if I'm really hungry or I'm agitated, I might say, I feel so hungry. You look like a piece of pizza to me right now. I don't want to talk about this till after I eat. And that little thing can change a marriage, because now we're not going to have unnecessary fights, no unnecessary arguments. Instead, I'm going to be aware that when my body's agitated, my mind wants to match it. And I can't tell you, that's one of the most profound things people could ever learn: to not be run with whatever way your body feels and make up a story, and instead say, I'm aware that my body's agitated right now. It's really, really powerful.
I think that's brilliant. On the topic of getting angry with spouses, one of the core reasons I believe that that destroys relationships is what you say, do, and react when you're angry with each other. Now, brilliantly, you've highlighted, Christian, how sleep can affect that. Make sure you're adequately have your sleep. You mentioned about being hungry and angry, and the pizza and analog analogy is brilliant. And then the tiredness fatigue being a factor. Considering all of that, what are the other things that you factor in, especially when there is angry component between two individuals that obviously love each other as well, but may be falling in the trap of the anger issue?
Yeah, so what I teach couples, but I first and foremost practice with my own wife. And as I said, we've been married 25 years. We're happier now than we've ever been. We communicate very effectively. So here's what I would tell people: every emotion you ever have is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your emotions come and go, but your actions can't be undone. Your words can't be unsaid. So, what my wife and I, if we were in a disagreement, the very first thing we acknowledge is we're going to get through this emotion, and we're together for life. So we're going to get through this emotion, and however we're feeling, if we're not heard, we're going to get through it, and then we're eventually going to be heard. So what we do is we fast forward to the point where we truly listen to each other. And that is one of the greatest gifts you can give your spouse and yourself, is to take the time to listen. I'm not trying to be right. I think when you're struggling to be right, that's ego, and that is only going to lead to problems. Young couples, especially young people, and I can speak on behalf of young men. Many young men really feel the need that they need to be right. They think, I've got to be right. You have to acknowledge that I'm right. And I think that's foolish. It's unwise. You don't need to be right. And instead, you can come to truth, but you can come to truth with compassion and understanding. So the first thing to do in a couple relationship is say, look, however we feel right now, it's going to change. That emotion cannot stay forever. Every emotion has a beginning, middle, and end. Second, at some point, we're going to figure this out. So why don't we fast forward to the point where we figure it out? And it's honestly, it's a game changer. It can really help every listener out there right now have a better marriage, because you seek to understand rather than seek to be proven that you're right.
Thank you for explaining that, Christian. Christian, you've also discussed a little bit about, well, quite a lot talked about the yield theory. Would you explain what that is?
Yield theory is an approach to communication that is about meeting people where they are, getting around that fight or flight response, and speaking in ways that can be heard, regardless of how intense emotions are. So I developed this approach back in 1998. I've spent my entire career making it something really easy to understand and practical. So yield theory boils down to doing three things: listen, validate, and explore options. And here's why I love this. I I had a woman come up to me about 10 years ago. I was speaking at this big mental health convention. There were 500 people there, and this woman came up to me at the break and she said, "Is that it? Is that your big theory? The actions come down to three things?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She was very condescending, which is always fun. She said, "Is that it? Is that your big theory? Three things?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." But all Bruce Lee ever did was move, block, and hit, and he did pretty well for himself. So as easy as it is for us to say move, block, and hit, that doesn't mean we can fight like Bruce Lee. So yield theory comes down to listen, validate, explore options, but it's how you listen, how you validate, and how you explore options that makes all the difference in the world. And yield theory is driven by seven fundamental components. Um, so yes, the three actions really are listen, validate, explore options, but the seven fundamental components drive the way we listen, validate, explore options. And the seventh component, the most important, is non-attachment. In other words, the more attached, you know that you're not your piece of jewelry. So if you lose your piece of jewelry, you're not less of a person. But you're also, if you learn a new idea, that doesn't mean you're less of a person. If you change your ideas as you get older, it doesn't mean you're less of a person. So non-attachment doesn't just mean not being attached to your physical objects. It means not being attached to your thoughts either. And when we practice non-attachment, it says, if you challenge something that I say, I recognize, because I practice non attachment, that you're not challenging the essence of who I am. You're simply challenging whatever it is that I said. And so, what non attachment does is it allows us to give feedback to people, because if I'm giving you feedback about something you said, I separate what you said from who you are. So that way, you're not defending who you are. You're simply saying, we're isolating. If I'm giving you feedback about your words, that's all I'm giving you feedback about. And it's a very effective way to communicate, and it's a very effective way to take feedback and learn and grow. So, yeah, yield theory is a very pragmatic approach. I talk about it a lot in my book, Walking Through Anger, which is a book that's way more about anger. It's really about how to handle any tough emotion. Um, but yes, I talk a lot about it in Walking Through Anger.
And that's about anger. Are you allowed to have anger?
I just did a short video on my YouTube about this. Anger itself is not wrong or bad. Anger can be very helpful for you. Anger is an incredible motivator. If you are stuck in depression, anger can help get you out of that. If you are really frustrated and you feel anger because you're upset that you're not living to your maximum potential, anger can help wake you up first thing in the morning and get you to be the best version of yourself. So anger is not wrong or bad in and of itself. In fact, a very helpful thing that every listener can do right now is personify anger. So the next time you're angry, personify anger. Picture anger is sitting next to you. Your own anger is sitting next to you as a human being. What would anger be trying to teach you in those moments? And when you can learn to talk with your anger as if it's a person, you will learn from it and you won't be reactive to it. So the way I say it is this. So if I say to this phone, hey phone, you're a lousy phone, you're no good. And he says, oh man. And I say, I'm just kidding, you're the best phone ever. And yay, he's happy. You can see I'm in control of the phone. And that sounds like, oh, that's so silly, it's a puppet. But how many times has your day been going one way and someone comes along and says or does something and throws your day off? In that moment, that person made you their puppet. And what happens is anger often makes people its puppet. Anger says, I'm gonna make you do this, or I'm gonna make you do that. And as long as you're a puppet to anger, then your life will be controlled by it. But when you can personify anger and you can talk to it and say, what are you trying to teach me? Maybe it's telling you, get out of that unhealthy relationship. Maybe it's telling you, quit that job that is not healthy for you to be in. Um, Anger could be telling you any one of those things. Hey, it's time to get in shape and really treat your body well. Um, that's okay. So be mindful to learn from your anger, just not be controlled by it.
I think that's very nicely said. That so don't let it get out of control, and don't let it control your thoughts. And then, because then you're riding on high emotions, and then it's a prefrontal, it's amygdala, it's all the others, and you're under. Let me explore this a little bit more with you, and I want to explore it in context of children and or teams. Children and or teams. How do you train your teams, and do you train them to be angry? Do you try to have them have a bit of rage so they can bring the best out of themselves and set standards and say, well, you got to channel this angerness. So you could do that with teams, but what about now with kids? How would you make them understand control and give them therapy as to how they should channel their anger?
One of the best ways, if it's possible for you to start when they're children, that's the best. Because when you are working with children, you can use puppets, you can use stuffed animals, and I think one of the best ways to teach kids is in their natural learning way. So they like to play. Could you imagine if you think through a situation, for example, maybe a child takes another child's toy and they get angry. So you could take two stuffed animals and play that scenario out with your child. And you could say, here's a healthy way to deal with it, here's an unhealthy way. So this bear takes this bear's toy. So he runs over and punches him. Now he's in trouble. Was that a good idea? No. Okay. How can he handle it differently? And the more you're proactive with your children and you teach them about potential scenarios, I'll give you a common one. I'm talking about young children. Let's say they're going to go to the park. I see this happen all the time. And kids, when they get ready to leave the park, they throw a tantrum. They get angry. It's not fair. Why do we have to leave? But you know that that end is going to come. So why not prepare them for that? One of the things my wife used to say is, we're going to go to the park now. When it's time to leave, here's what's going to happen. We're going to leave because we're going to go on to the next adventure. And if when it's time to leave, you whine, then we're not going to go on to the next adventure. We're going to come home. If you don't whine, we're going to go here, do this. And she would prepare her ahead of time. And then we would talk it out and practice it. So when it came time to leave, she was, okay, it's time to go. Like, it's cool. Like, she couldn't even understand how other kids were upset because she was like, don't they know it's time to move to the next adventure? Like, all it took was preparation. It takes self-discipline on the parents' part to take the time to teach your children. But absolutely, can you start with children when they're young? And look, teenagers' brains, the frontal cortex isn't fully developed until the mid, even some recent studies say the late 20s. So when you have a teenager who says they were in dating somebody for 2 days and they broke up, and then they say, I'll never meet anybody ever again, it's because they're in their limbic system. They're in their emotional center of their brain. So instead of getting angry with them or saying, oh, you're being ridiculous, from yield theory, I would try to see it through their eyes and realize that their brain isn't fully developed. So you don't want to sit there and lecture them. Instead, listen to them, validate them. Oh my gosh, honey, that must feel so sad to think you're never going to meet anybody again. And once they feel validated, then you can explore options. I know it feels like you're never going to meet anybody again, but I really believe that you will. I really believe you have a lot more life to go. Listen, validate, explore options. And the main essence of yield theory is try to see things through other people's eyes. You know, Stephen Covey, in his classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he used a great analogy. He said, um, if somebody's eyeglasses work for them, that doesn't mean they're going to work for you. So you've got to have the right prescription. And in that same way, when I say, if you stop and look through someone's eyes, you're not trying to say, well, I did this, so this is easy. Yeah, but that you had your eyes, you had your brain. If you look through their eyes, you're going to have a ton more compassion. You're not going to be judgmental. And you're going to recognize that you have to work with what they have. You can't just assume they have your experiences or your intellectual functioning. So, yeah, I think it's a great question. Start with children, practice with them. The more you practice what they're going to encounter, the better prepared they'll be for it.
Thank you for explaining that, Christian. I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to throw in two quick questions. And one is about the social media influence. And in your opinion, we know that there are studies out there. How is it making people more frustrated, angry, and depressed? Give us some practical tips. How can we make sure that those two, three things don't creep in while we are following or watching social media, and especially to kids?
Well, I think it's really important for parents to understand what their children are taking in through social media. And I think it's really important that they talk to them about it. I can't tell you how many parents will tell me, well, I tell them they're not allowed to look at it. So I'm not, well, then their children look at it, but they're not going to share it with their parents. So they never get to have it. So instead of like closing yourself off, I would start to say, they're going to encounter social media. The more you can talk to them about it, the more you can help them see it's not reality. It's not reality. People put touched up photos on social media. They take pictures when they're happy. So young people will see a whole bunch of people being happy and they'll think, see, everybody else is happy. I'm the only one. And that's not reality. Reality is people go up and down. Um, So I would talk to your children about the social media. I think that's so important. And the other thing that I think is really, really important, and I'll be quick with this, but this is important, is before the World War One, fewer than 20% of the soldiers could stand at point blank range, see the whites of the eyes of someone, and actually pull the trigger because they realized they were taking a human life. Fewer than 20% could do that. But by Vietnam War, more than 80% of the soldiers could do it. And the one thing that the military changed was what they fired at. Before World War One, they would fire at targets, like a red target with circles. But then they changed to firing at human cutouts. So they literally desensitized people to taking life, and they increased soldiers' ability to kill. Now, the video games that parents let their children play, they are essentially practicing dehumanizing others. And it's so, these, like for instance, the first person shooter games that they have, these are so realistic that the US military uses them to help soldiers who have post traumatic stress disorder reenact battles where they can take control with a therapist there and help them work out their PTSD. So that's how realistic these games are. And when parents just allow their children to play these games with no supervision, with no talking about them, what they're doing to their brains is equivalent to what soldiers who get PTSD are experiencing. So, in addition to social media, I highly recommend that parents be mindful about what they're allowing their children to play with these video games, because they are essentially practicing dehumanizing others.
Final thoughts, Christian. What would you like to give our audience a message, if any?
Well, my final thought is this. In the history of humanity, you are the only person who has unrestricted, unfiltered access to your own mind. So if your mind is a place of peace, that's awesome. But if your mind is filled with anger, angst, agitation, irritability, you're the only one who can change it. And I believe you're worth your entire effort. So I would say be mindful of what you practice. Be mindful of what you practice because you're mastering it. And be mindful of what you're filling your mind with. Because if you're filling your mind with things that anger you, you're going to be angry. If you fill your mind with what brings you peace, you're going to find peace. I think that's the message I'd love to have people understand.
It was quite brilliant. A truly enlightening conversation, Christian. Thank you for bringing your wisdom and heartfelt compassion. We felt that, and obviously your groundbreaking approach, your just general approach to emotion, and trying to make us understand what anger is really about. So you make us realize how important it is to understand and redirect it. So thank you for coming to the show,
Thank
and
you so much for having me.
it's a pleasure is ours. What a remarkable journey we've just experienced together. The path to health isn't always straight, but it's always worth the effort. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your wellness journey, armed with new knowledge and a fresh perspective. If today's episode left you inspired, share it with people, someone who need to hear this. Give us a thumbs up and your opinion. Keep exploring, keep evolving, and we'll see you in the next episode of KhanKlinics.